What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Rethinking Christianity. In today's episode, I will be continuing our discussion around the topic of doubt. Today's episode is The Beauty in Doubt Part 2, and this will be on the topic of doubt as a tool. And so, in the first part of our series, we talked about how doubt can increase and help our view of God. And on today's episode, I want to talk about how doubt can be a tool that is used by God to change things in us, to draw us closer to Him, and can be a good and positive thing. What we talked about in episode 1 was this idea that our doubt oftentimes can draw up new things in us. And specifically what we talked about was it can change our view of God. And as we are seeking to understand God, and if we view God as this infinite and incomprehensible being, then oftentimes it will become difficult to understand God because He's infinite, right? So what we have to then realize and maybe reflect on is our doubts may just be us doubting this concept of God that we have, or this idea of God that we have that may not be accurate in the first place. And so that first episode was all about figuring that out. And today, what I want us to kind of talk about is this idea of doubt as a tool. And oftentimes when we talk about the idea of doubt, it is viewed in a negative manner or in a way that is not helpful. And yet my hope in these few episodes is to encourage you and to help you walk through whatever journey of doubt that you're dealing with, or whatever way you're seeing doubt. And the hope for these episodes is for you to get to the other side of doubt without going crazy. And it is to help you, to encourage you, to just to guide you, and maybe just give you some new thoughts that maybe you haven't thought about before, and maybe be something that can be helpful. So ultimately, the hope is for this to help. And today, the way I want to approach doubt is this idea of doubt as a tool, meaning that doubt can be something that is used to help us. Doubt can be something as a whole that is used to sharpen us. And doubt can be something that God uses to change things in our hearts that may need to be changed. Today, as we talk about that, I want us to think about our perspective of how we view doubt. If you view doubt in a negative way, or maybe you've looked at doubt or been told doubt is a bad thing, whatever that viewpoint is, I want you to kind of take a step back from that and ask yourself the question, how can I reframe and relook at how I view doubt? So when we look at doubt as a tool, how do you view a tool? So a tool is something that is used to resolve an issue or to solve a problem. People that are building things use tools. People that are fixing things use tools. And tools, most of the time, are very, very helpful. The right tool can solve a problem that often seems bigger than it is. So, for example, say that you're fixing something in your house, and you have this small little screw or something that you need to get unscrewed, but you don't have the right head for it. You don't have the right tool. That makes your job very difficult. That makes it very hard. But if you have the right tool, it's a pretty simple fix. It's pretty easy. This is how I think we should view doubt. Doubt should be viewed as this tool that sometimes can help us grow closer to God and draw us further in depth with God, and help us fix things in our faith that may seem like a big thing, but they're really not. We just have to view doubt in the right perspective and in the right way. So for those of you that have doubt that may arise in your journey of faith and are uncertain as to what to do with it, then this way of viewing doubt could be a great starting point for you. That you kind of take a step back and you say, okay, how have I viewed doubt? And how can I better view doubt? And so viewing it as a tool instead of something that is harmful is helpful, because if you're someone who cares about your faith and you're someone who cares about God and your relationship and following Jesus, I pretty much guarantee you're going to have moments where you deal and wrestle with doubts about things that you've grown up in, doubts about thoughts you've heard about God, doubts about things that you've seen in church, and whatever it may be. I think we all work through those things, and it is important for us to not look at doubt as this negative, horrible thing, but to view it just like we just talked about as a tool. So doubt, it can be a tool, and tools are good things. Tools are used to resolve issues, and oftentimes when there's this big issue in our faith, a lot of times the doubt can be a good thing, and it can help us, and it can resolve something that seems really big, but it's really not. It's just simply something that we have to work through and allow it to help us. And our perspective, when we have doubt, is one of the most important things regarding how doubt affects us. And so I want you to think about this. Our perspective on doubt can either draw us towards seeing doubt in a negative way or allowing it to be used for our betterment. So if you view doubt in this negative way, you're not going to let it help you. You're going to suppress it. You're going to avoid it. Or it can be something that helps you grow. So how do you view doubt currently? Think about that. How do you view doubt, or how have you viewed doubt when you have been walking or journeying in your faith? Are you afraid of it? It is something that when you have these doubtful thoughts, you're freaked out by it, you don't like it, you don't know what to do with it, and you're pretty concerned about it. Or there are others of us where, for me, and in some parts of my faith, where I would just ignore it. I would ignore the doubt in my faith or the doubt about things that I heard, and I would just continue to try and just do the status quo thing, practice faith how I had been taught to practice faith, and just continue following the way I had been told, which in some ways that's good, but other ways I think ignoring it or being afraid of it also isn't really helpful. And so what often occurs when doubt arises is that doubt in our faith will lead us to a crossroads in our faith, right? So doubt will lead us to this crossroads, and doubt can lead to several different directions. The first one is abandonment. So many people, when they deal with doubt, they finally confront it. For many, doubt leads us to just simply abandoning our faith, leaving our faith, and not sticking to it. And for a lot of people, that's been the result. And for some of you, that might be where you feel like you're headed, and that might freak you out. And I would just say that's okay. Don't allow it to scare you too much, but let it be something that you continue to work through. So the first place that doubt can take us is abandonment. For some people, they leave the faith. For others, I would call ignorance. For others, doubt leads to simply just ignoring it or suppressing it. So for some of you, doubt is this thing that when you get it, you get that feeling of butterflies in your stomach, or fear, or tightness in your chest. And it may be something that draws up anxiety and worry and concern for you in your faith. And that can be something that is really hard to work with and hard to deal with because you don't know what to do with it. And I've been there. And for some of us, we suppress it. And like I said, that's been me in certain parts of my faith that I've just suppressed the doubt that I have. And then I think this last one is the one where I think we should all hope to go towards. So doubt leads us to this crossroads. We can either abandon it, we can ignore it. And then this last one I think that is super helpful is contemplation. Yet my hope is, despite there are different directions, that if you deal with doubt, that it would lead you towards contemplation, meaning that you would allow doubt to draw up thinking about what it is that you're doubting, what it is that you've believed, what it is that maybe God is trying to change in you. And so doubt can be this tool for you to contemplate on what it is you need to doubt. Maybe there are things that need to be doubted in your faith. It can be a tool for you to contemplate, to reflect, and think through what it is that you believe. So what do you believe? Is that something that you've genuinely thought through? What do I believe about God? What do I believe about Jesus? What do I believe about the church that I'm at? What do I believe about the sermons that I listen to? Or whatever it is that is connected to the faith that you follow, what is it that you believe? And doubt can be this tool for us to take a step back outside of our faith and look at it from kind of a bird's eye view and just say, okay, what is it here that I actually believe? And what is it here that is just tradition or just something that I grew up in? And it could be something that is really, really helpful and really good for you. And so doubt should be this tool. And it's all about that idea that I mentioned of how do we view doubt? How is our perspective on doubt? Is it this positive one, or is it this one that's really negative and one that kind of causes us to freak out, or does it cause us to ignore it? And the hope that I would have, like I mentioned, is that doubt would be something that we view in a positive manner that leads us to contemplation and reflection. Because I think that is what Jesus ultimately was calling people to do, was to reflect on what their hearts believed in, what their faith was in. And when we have doubt, it can be this beautiful opportunity for us to look at the way in which we're living, the way in which we're practicing faith, the things that we believe, and look at all those things and question them. And question them not in a way that's trying to prove something right or wrong, but simply asking the question, am I genuinely believing this? Is this something that's helping me? Is it something that's drawing me closer to God? Is it something that is drawing me closer to Jesus and making me a better follower of Jesus? And it could be that doubt is not the problem. It could be that your perspective on doubt and how you view doubt is what has been the problem. There's a quote by a author named Erica Bartholow, and it says this: "I found that the deeper I question my faith, the stronger it becomes, and my love, devotion, and passion for God grows more, not less. Because when I finally released the fear of what I might find if I fully explored my doubts, I discovered God was faithful in every question to meet me. I'm not saying He gave me every answer to every question, but He allowed me to wrestle through it with Him to an acceptable conclusion, and my faith is stronger today for it." So for some of us, like I mentioned, we are afraid of doubt. We worry about doubt. But this quote, I think, is really helpful. It shows us that the more we question, the deeper our faith is often grown. And the more we seek, the more God kind of gives us sometimes, I think, peace and contentment, even if we don't have the answers. And I think that quote is really helpful. And that's been, for me personally, as I have been working through my faith and thinking through my faith of what it is I want to believe, what it is I don't really believe anymore, whatever it may be, I've found that as I work through my doubt, I find myself becoming more content and more okay with my doubt, and more okay with my faith, and more okay with not understanding things fully. And for some people, that might not be the perfect answer, but I think what it is that this whole thing and this way of viewing doubt is understanding that it is a part of the journey of faith. It is a part of the journey of following Jesus. We see it in the Gospels, even at the end of the story, when Jesus resurrects, there's doubting Thomas. He's right there doubting Jesus right in front of him. And so doubt is this thing that is a part of the story of people who follow Jesus. And for us, that has to be true. And because I think it's a good thing. It's a tool that has to be used. And for me personally, I think that's what we have to do. We have to view doubt as this tool that is not this thing that we should be afraid of or something that is going to hurt us, but something that allows us to grow deeper. And when we come to this crossroads, that we wouldn't ignore it, that we wouldn't abandon our faith, but we would grow in contemplation. And I think a question that is helpful in the conversation viewing doubt as a tool is this question right here. Could God be using doubt to change things in us that were never what He intended in the first place? So could God be using doubt, as I've mentioned, as a tool to change things in us, in our hearts, that were never what He intended in the first place? So what God intends for His people, when we follow after Him and we seek Him, I think that He allows us to see that. And I think He reveals that to us, what it is that He truly wants for His people as we are working through our faith and journeying in our faith and following Jesus. I think that if we have doubts and when we wrestle with those, God will show us and give us the things that need to be changed. So here's some examples. And these are for different people, and these may not be for you, but there may be something else that God maybe could use doubt to help you change in your faith. So maybe you grew up in a very legalistic tradition of faith, and God is using doubt in you to change your heart to one that shows more empathy and maybe more grace. Maybe you grew up in a really traditional, legalistic tradition that was very harsh on people, and maybe you've doubted that. Maybe you don't get that. Maybe you don't understand why that is. Maybe that's something that has at times has made you want to abandon your faith, or maybe you just ignore it and you don't really care. But for you, I think that could be something where doubt is actually drawing up more grace and empathy. So for some of you, that might be where you're at. And these are just examples to kind of think through and to draw from as, okay, well, that's not it for me, but what could be? Maybe the culture of faith that you grew up in is one that seems really shallow to you, one that is just very cliche, very cookie cutter Christianity, very seeker friendly, whatever it may be. Maybe that version of faith just seems shallow to you and you don't really get it, and you're kind of doubting and wondering and asking, is this really what following Jesus is about? Is this really what God is all about? And maybe that is something where God is using doubt as a tool in your life to draw you closer and deeper intellectually to Him. And I think that is one of the key things that doubt does, is that it allows us to grow deeper in faith, not just in our hearts, but I think in our minds, because it forces us to go on journeys of discovery. And so that could be you. You could be in a culture of faith that's shallow. So for some of us, it's a very legalistic thing. For others, it might be really shallow. And maybe you are a person that is simply doubting God because of your desire to fully grasp Him. And maybe He just desires for you to grow in greater faith of how infinite and how big He is. And this is exactly what we talked about on the first episode, that doubt oftentimes can be this tool for us to allow God to be bigger in our eyes and in our hearts and be more infinite and more incomprehensible. That, I think, is very key and vital, and I think something that you should continue to go back to as you work through your doubt. So those are just examples. Like, could God be using doubt to change things in us that He never meant for them to be in the first place? So, I don't think God wants people that are a part of super shallow faith communities. I don't think God wants people in communities of faith that are super legalistic and hurtful. And so when you doubt the traditions of faith that you grow up in, I think a lot of times that can be a good thing, and maybe God wants you to doubt that. And I think for a lot of people, this is what causes them to pull away from their faith. Not necessarily the things about God that are true and the things about God that are good, but maybe the culture that God was presented to them in. And so I think that is very important. So could God be using doubt as a tool to draw up change in your heart? I think that's very important and something to reflect on. And so doubt is not a bad thing, as we have mentioned. And I really believe that it can at times be a tool that God is giving you in this season of your life. And I think that there are always things that God desires to change in us. Because He is, as I've said, this infinite being that is drawing us closer to Him as we journey and we seek Him authentically. And so as we've kind of discussed this conversation and worked through this idea of doubt as a tool, what is it that God is wanting to change in you? Is He wanting to change your perspective on doubt? Or maybe you view doubt in a positive way, and maybe He wants to change things in your heart and the ways you've observed faith, and maybe the ways you've followed Jesus. And maybe the doubt that you have right now is leading you in a direction that's going to draw you to this authentic faith that's fulfilling, that draws up contentment in you, that draws up peace in you, that draws up rest in you. And I think that is ultimately the hope that I have, is that as you work through doubt, that you would be able to come to a place of contentment, a place of rest, and a place where your heart can be okay with the God that you follow and the Jesus that you see and the way that you live out your faith daily and the way in which you are practicing and journeying the way and following of Jesus. So the big takeaways on today's episode are just basically this idea that doubt is a tool, as that's the title of this episode. And I think there are, three kind of big takeaways that I want you to get from this episode. Our perspective on doubt should be one that is positive. You shouldn't view doubt as a negative thing. That is as simple as I can put it. Doubt is not bad. Don't be afraid of it. Like, embrace it. Go deeper. Just like that quote we read, embrace it. Allow it to be used as a tool in your life. The second thing is, doubt is a tool that is given to us to help us and not harm us. It's not going to harm you. It is a tool that I think God uses to help us, to change things in our heart that need to be changed. And as you change your perspective on doubt, be reminded that it is not a negative thing or also a thing that you should be ashamed of. It's not anything that you should be ashamed of, and it doesn't make you a bad follower of Jesus, a bad Christian. And if you're not a Christian, it doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you a bad person that you don't understand all parts of faith. I think that is something maybe that the church and Christianity maybe has presented to people that aren't followers of Jesus or people that believe. So those are the big takeaways of today. Like, how do you view doubt? Is it negative? You look at it in a different way. I think that could be really helpful. Brian McLaren says it like this: if you're a person of certainty, you wouldn't struggle with doubt. So the fact that you struggle is actually a sign of your faith. If you're a person of certainty, you wouldn't struggle with doubt. And faith is actually this belief in something that you don't really fully get. You don't fully grasp. You don't fully understand. And I think that's where we have to rest in, that faith is working through our journey of following God and journey of following Jesus in the midst of our doubt. And so 2 rethinking questions for you to reflect on in your doubt and in your journey of faith. How do you view doubt in your faith? As a negative thing or as a tool to be used? How can doubt actually draw up positive change in your view of God as you journey in faith? As we work through this life and journeying and following of God and following of Jesus, there are going to be seasons in our lives where we doubt and seasons in our lives where we struggle and we don't fully get it. But doubt can be this beautiful tool that God uses to grow us closer to Him and change things in our heart that will allow us to find more rest, peace, contentment, love, and grace. And doubt is not a bad thing. It's not a negative thing. So as you journey in faith, look at doubt as this tool to be used to draw you closer to Jesus, to draw you, your heart, your soul, and your mind closer to who He is, what He wants for you, and how He can shape and change your life for the better. And that is the hope that I have from this episode, and the hope that I have in this podcast is that you would draw closer to Jesus in a way that brings rest to your heart, your soul, and your mind.